our top story this morning. It is shares of Apple and a number of its iPhone component suppliers that are under pressure on reports of slowing demand. Let's get to our Josh Lipton. He's at One Market to fill us in on what is the problem, if there really is one. Josh.
David, Apple investors we know, listen, they've been counting on a wave of iPhone fans all around the world upgrading to that new iPhone 10. But this morning, new questions about the real popularity of that device. So there are reports citing Taiwan's Economic Daily that Apple in the first quarter is going to cut its sales forecast for the 10 to just 30 million units, and that is down from what it said was an initial plan of 50 million units. Apple, remember, of course, doesn't disclose quarterly sales targets for the 10, which officially went on sale back in early November. Apple suppliers down this morning on that report. Just look at Qorvo, Cirrus Logic, Skyworks, as well as Finisar, which Apple just awarded $390 million to from its Advanced Manufacturing Fund. Analysts have been weighing in too, and not all of them are so bullish. Nomura recently downgraded the stock to a neutral, saying the stock's gains for the 10 supercycle are in what it called the late innings. Apple, we know, is counting on the 10, which it bills as the future of the smartphone, to give a lift to iPhone shipments in 2018.
When we'll actually get the facts, Ed, but what is your sense here in terms of
what's going on with
and China, of course, figures prominently in this, given it's, I think, as much as 25% of revenues.
25%, 20 to 25% of revenues. China's interest in iPhone really picked up with the 6 when that was introduced a few years ago, largely, I think, because that was the first year they had the plus size. And I think that was, they got a lot of switchers from Android people over. From our sort of sources, we're hearing very similarly with the 10, even though it's slightly different form factor, there's huge interest in China. I think what we're seeing here, though, is, the estimate, the 50 million estimate was really high, in my opinion, for a first quarter, for 2 months worth of availability.
Scott, were they overly optimistic on 50 million? What do you think?
Yeah, we might be at peak iPhone, but still it's, Apple's going to do double the profits this quarter that Amazon has done its entire history. So we might be at peak iPhone, but it's a pretty nice peak. What's I think the bigger story here is we may have seen the passing of the baton of the most influential piece of tech hardware in the history of mankind, the iPhone, to the most influential device of the next 10 years, and that is the Echo, which supposedly sold tens of millions of devices and was the most downloaded app across iOS and Android this holiday season.
Santa delighting Amazon this year. The company announcing its biggest ever holiday season, with the Echo Dot becoming the top-selling product across all categories on Amazon, though, of course, in true Amazon fashion, a little light on some of the details and specifics in terms of the sales numbers. Joining us now is Guru Hariharan, CEO of Boomerang Commerce, formerly with Amazon and eBay, and Mark Mahaney, lead tech analyst at RBC Capital. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us today.
Good morning.
Guru, let's start with you. I saw a stat here from IHS Markit that said online shopping typically accounts for roughly 10% of U.S. spending, but that it expects it will account for nearly 1/5 of holiday sales this year, and much of those sales will go to Amazon. Do you agree?
I agree. I think this holiday season we saw tremendous amount of price wars happening, and also the selection that Amazon had. Both of them were pretty significantly up in the game, and a lot of the share should have gone to Amazon.
And I want to dig into that a little bit more, but first, Mark, the Echo Dot and the Fire TV Stick, top-selling products for Amazon this season, according to this new release. Now, your own research has showed that there's a lot of potential here for Alexa and Alexa-enabled devices. What do you think the financial impact could be?
Well, one, just as a reminder, they actually put that same headline in a press release last year. They've always put a lot of these clues and a little bit of riddles in their press releases. They're fun to read, but occasionally you get some good data points. It's not surprising. So what they're telling you is that these Alexa devices are selling like pancakes. We put out a report a week ago where we estimated that the Alexa installed base was around 40 million. I mean, we could be low by 25%. It could be closer to 50 million. And these things are selling well. The price points aggressively are coming down, and then people are using them for incremental purchases. In other words, they also put a data point in their press release that said millions of Prime members are now using their Alexa devices to order via voice more products from Amazon. This is a customer retention. It's a customer satisfaction tool, and it seems to be doing really well. And our headline pitch here is we think Alexa and the entire ecosystem can generate $10 billion plus in revenue for Amazon by 2020.
More wild swings for Bitcoin overnight, as Morgan Stanley came out with a new note saying the cryptocurrency's true value could be zero. Joining us at Post 9 is Michael Casey, senior advisor at the MIT Media Lab Digital Currency Initiative. He's also chairman of CoinDesk's advisory board and co-author of The Truth Machine, The Blockchain and the Future of Everything, which is on sale February 27th. Well, you are deep into how we were just talking about this, how Bitcoin and blockchain actually work. Here's a point that was raised earlier. Is there a way that you can invest in blockchain without having to get involved with Bitcoin or another cryptocurrency?
Oh God, that's a rabbit hole, right? Because I mean, it depends what you mean by blockchain. There are a lot of people who think that you really can't have a blockchain without something like a cryptocurrency in Bitcoin, because it ceases to be the decentralized distributed ledger that it should be. So the answer would therefore be maybe, if you believe that it's possible to create one without it, and you could possibly invest in these companies that are providing these services that are without cryptocurrencies. And so Chain.com is a startup company that's doing pretty well. I mean, there are companies that are working with them, NASDAQ, for example. Maybe NASDAQ's a little bit of an exposure to it, not very much. But certainly via, if there's ways to get access to some of the tokens of the companies that are providing those services, you could
But
gain
that's the funny thing. It's
exposure
like if I sort of am excited about the idea that I don't have to pay title insurance one day, on a mortgage, that I could transfer those documents more securely, why do I have to get involved with coins of any kind?
Well, ultimately, because it's the incentive system around which you create a truly permissionless architecture for a distributed ledger. Without that incentive system, then it becomes something that is still partially centrally controlled, and therefore is at risk of what we call, censorship or control, right? So it depends on what your sort of philosophical position is. If you really believe in a fully decentralized system, then we kind of need the cryptocurrency architecture to build and to be developed and to grow. If you think that it's okay to compromise a little bit, and that's not a bad position to take, then you can accept that there is a distributed ledger that could be run by a consortium of validators, for example, and they're not incentivized by money, they're incentivized by the fact that they all agree this is a good idea to participate in, right?
In an interview with the UK's Prince Harry on BBC Radio, Obama warned against the irresponsible use of social media. Take a listen.
One of the dangers of the internet is that people can have entirely different realities. They can be just cocooned in information that reinforces their current biases. The truth is that on the internet, everything is simplified. And when you meet people face to face, it turns out they're complicated.
People are complicated, apparently. That's what we hear. Twitter and social media, of course, and Facebook and everything else. The questions about regulatory, in particular, sort of come to mind. Not to mention, of course, the meddling by the Russians in the election in 2016, and what, if anything, we're going to see in terms of increased regulation and/or at least the ability of these platforms to sort of police themselves.
Time now for your executive edge. The Library of Congress will no longer add every public tweet to its archives. It launched this project 7 years ago, and the library will now only archive tweets on a selective basis, the same way it does with websites. This changes the game for the president, although they may deem everything the president of the United States says to be archivable.
Right, there's a guy or somebody, I don't know who does it, who turns the tweets into these.
The question is,
the
who
White House
decides?
statements on the stationery.
Yes.
Who decides which tweets?
There must be a quality control committee, I would imagine, or someone,
government work, right?
Someone who deems that.
Government work, that's the job.
That's got to be painful watching that all day.
There is no rest for the weary in Cupertino. On top of reports Apple iPhone 10 sales could fall below expectations, the lawsuits keep piling up over the company's deliberate software slowdowns of older iPhone models. According to Reuters, there are now 8 lawsuits seeking class action status over that issue. For more on Apple in 2018, Bruce Tognazzini is principal with the Norman Nielsen Group and was employee number 66 at Apple back in the early days. Bruce, good to have you here this morning.
Thank you.
First of all, what's your read on this issue that's now become controversial about Apple kind of using software remotely to, they say, of course, enhance the performance of older phones, but users say that it's slowing them down?
Well, it is slowing them down, and the reason for it slowing them down is the batteries no longer have the ability to maintain peak power for as many hours as people use their phones. Apple's failure in this case, which is typical of Apple, is they kept it all a big secret. If they allowed you to check your battery, if they allowed you to see your battery was slowing down, was causing them to have to slow it down, you would have the option of going in and buying a new battery. Instead, there's just this mysterious slowing of the phone, which after decades of software upgrades slowing things because the code just gets more and more complex, people just assume, well, the old phone can't handle the new software. So it's once again Apple keeping everything a big secret because that's just their natural inclination that's gotten them into 8 lawsuits.
Many homeowners in high-tax states are lining up to prepay their property taxes. Homeowners are hoping to lock in 2017's deductions before they're capped due to the new tax law. Eric Chemmy's all over that story. Hey, Eric.
How you doing, guys? So I'm here in Greenburgh. It's a town within Westchester County. As you know, Westchester County has maybe the highest property taxes in the entire country. There have been hundreds of people in line here all day long. It seems like the entire town has been here paying their taxes. But here's the thing. It's complicated because there's village taxes, town taxes, county taxes, state taxes. Not all of them do you know what those numbers are assessed for 2018. You can only pay the ones that you've been assessed, and that's what people are doing here today. It's a partial payment of the things that they know. We talked to a lot of the people who've been waiting in line today. Here's what they had to say about their experience.
To get the deduction, which we're not going to be allowed to get next year, doesn't that make sense to save money?
Everyone's just trying to get it in so we can write it off on our taxes for next year, because once January 1 comes, that opportunity is lost.
We're trying to save money. That's basically the gist of it. It's not complicated.
A lot of the people that I talked with, I asked them, have you talked to a tax planner before coming here? And a lot of people said, no, we're just going to come. We're going to see if we can pay these taxes, and whatever the town will accept, that's what we'll pay. I've seen lots of people here just pulling out their checkbook.
California gets ready to legalize recreational marijuana, what's being called the Toke of Midnight, come January 1st. Cannabis companies are prepping for a big opportunity. Aditi Roy is in San Jose with more. Aditi.
Hi there, Morgan. That's right. We are at Buddy's Cannabis here in Silicon Valley, where they are ramping up. They've been selling medical marijuana since 2010, and now they're ramping up big time to sell the recreational stuff once it becomes legal starting next week. They have fully stocked up on all of their varieties here and all their strains of cannabis. They're also expanding their cultivation, and they're hiring more people. Buddy's is the first business cannabis company in the state to become licensed to sell recreational cannabis once it becomes legal starting next week. The owner, Matt Lucero, used to be a corporate attorney in Silicon Valley and has taken multiple companies public. He tells us that Buddy's makes annual revenue of about in the tens of millions of dollars, and that he expects that revenue to spike about 30% once that prohibition period ends.
We definitely see this as a huge opportunity for us because we're going to be the first entity that many of these folks are going to be visiting to experience recreational cannabis. So this is going to be our opportunity to lose. We are going to be ready for the crowds. As I mentioned, we've got plenty of stock on hand. We're not going to be running out of anything.
In the upper Midwest, the Great Plains, Northeast New England, it is much, much colder than normal this time of year. We're seeing temperatures here in Chicago, for example, that we're used to seeing, say, late January, early February. So this cold snap that's come down has put the burr into the winter here for a lot of folks. The wind chills this morning were right around 0-1 degrees, and weather is all relative. A few days ago it was much colder than that, so it actually feels a little bit balmy compared to what it was on Tuesday. We can tell you about some problems that this cold weather, and we all know about that snow out of Erie, Pennsylvania, but in the state of Minnesota, and these are folks who are used to cold and snow, there have been close to 500 traffic mishaps reported just today. 500. And it's not even 2 o'clock in the afternoon there yet. So here's what we know about the forecast going forward. This cold weather is going to stick around another 5 or 6 days, probably closer to the end of next week before temperatures get back to anywhere close to normal here in the Midwest and the upper plains especially. You guys on the East Coast and Northeastern New England, you might see a little warmer temperatures coming your way before we see warmer temperatures coming our way.
I cannot believe how talented this guy is. Look at him go. There's Mr. Wonderful Guitar.
Here to stay.
We're taking requests, by the way. He wants Purple Rain. Read us your request. We'll see what we can hook you up.
Purple Rain coming out would be awesome.
And a tip jar, too. It's unbelievable.
Donald Trump targeting Amazon in a new tweet just minutes ago. He says, quote, why is the U.S. Post Office, which is losing many billions of dollars a year while charging Amazon and others so little to deliver their packages, making Amazon richer and the post office dumber and poorer, question mark, should be charging much more. Take a look at shares of Amazon, because this is not just a story about what the president thinks of the post office or how much they're charging for shipping. This is really a story about what the regulatory environment may look like for Amazon and some of these other big tech giants in 2018. Right now, you're seeing that stock, by the way, just literally coming down. It was up before. So see what Trump actually hitting the stock right here.
Question, though, and the question is, would the market fund Amazon's own distribution system? They've been able to raise capital at a cost of practically zero. Maybe that's what happens as a result of this.
It's the last trading day of 2017. Hard to believe in what a year it's been. The S&P on pace for its best gains in nearly 4 years. Joining us now is Mona Mahajan. She's Allianz Global Investors' U.S. investment strategist. She's here at Post 9 next to Peter Costa from Empire Executions. Welcome to you both. Thank you. Oh, where to begin? I mean, Mona, in a way, this year has been extraordinary, but at the same time, it's not that unusual for the S&P to see gains this large. So what do you think about the setup for next year?
Yeah, so, we actually continue to feel that the markets will perform well next year. We think we're set up nicely from an earnings perspective, from a GDP growth perspective, and rates, while they're rising, continue to remain relatively low. We see mid-single-digit S&P returns for 2018. We don't see the same 20% plus type returns that we've seen this year.
Well, not like anyone saw it this year, by the way.
Yeah, it's funny because it's been such an amazing year for investors. NASDAQ up 30%, S&P up 20%, but we don't see, the only time you really see a huge bear market is typically when you're entering recession or you're in a recessionary environment, and that's just not on the horizon for the next 12 to 18 months in our view.
Peter, it took you a while to become a believer.
Yes.
Now what?
I am a believer. No, I think for the first quarter we'll probably see continued gains. I think the momentum's there. I think the earnings momentum will continue. Going into the second quarter and third quarter, I'm not so sure.
We're still learning how the new tax code will impact the economy, and it turns out workers earning minimum wage will benefit. Kate Rogers has more. Kate?
Hi, Kelly. Well, those workers across the country will be ringing in the new year with higher pay thanks to laws or ballot initiatives. These 18 states are raising their minimum wages either on December 31st or January 1st. The highest dollar amount, that'll be in Washington state at $11.50 an hour, while in Maine, workers will get the highest percentage increase to $10 an hour, according to the Employment Policies Institute. There are also 20 localities hiking pay. In Mountain View and Sunnyvale, California, workers will be paid $15 an hour. That's over a 15% increase from today's rate, while in Seattle, pay will hit $15.45 an hour for minimum wage workers. The federal minimum wage is still stagnant at $7.25 an hour. That, of course, hasn't moved since 2009, and with President Trump in office and Republican control of Congress, there's little chance of changing that anytime soon, which is why we see states and localities taking matters into their own hands. Currently, these 29 states you just saw and Washington, D.C. have wages above the federal floor. We've also seen corporate America take matters into its own hands to raise wages for workers as well. A flurry of companies at the end of this year announcing increases to the minimum wage in the wake of the tax law, including Wells Fargo, BB&T, and so many more. Back over to you.
Okay, Kate, thank you very much. Kate Rogers. Well, that does it for us here on Squawk Alley in 2017. A happy New Year to everybody out there. Enjoy the holiday.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.